Hi everybody, Mick here from TRAFFIT. Welcome to another edition of Inside HR. And we are super lucky today to be joined by Natalia Urbańska. Natalia is a HR professional that's got over 10 years experience, especially in the Polish IT sector, such as a former director of HR at Devante. Natalia, welcome so much. Maybe I don't know, did I get that right? Is there anything I should add?
Yes, that's right. Thank you and welcome everyone. That's right. I've been in the IT industry in general for around 10 years. Started off as a marketing expert, then moved to recruitment and general HR in companies like first Idacto, that was marketing, then PGA Software, where I started recruiting, and then Devante, where I built the HR department from scratch. And now I'm like on the verge of professional changes, looking for new challenges after many years of cooperation with my ex-company.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, I'm no stranger to this. We were talking about this before as well. You know, changing is always exciting, a little bit nervous. So I really wish you the best of luck in finding your next challenge. And I'm still even more happy that, you know, while you're taking this downtime in between, that you found the time to talk with me today. So I really appreciate it. And again, you know, you've got an extreme wealth of knowledge and experience. And from the experience you had, have you traditionally been from the, would you say, the IT tech sector? Is that your specialization, would you say?
I would say so, but also I think this marketing angle, although like today I wouldn't call myself professional marketer, but still entering the industry from the marketing point of view, that was helpful while being, you know, employer branding and getting know the industry from the inside. That made it easy for me to start, you know, talking to the developers and other IT specialists, because I was just before cooperating within the projects, you know, being part of Scrum, all the agile processes, and like just learning, you know, what these, you know, guys are doing.
Yep. I mean, we've talked on previous episodes about, I saw a lot of synergies between what salespeople do and what HR professionals do, especially recruiters. You know, you've got to find candidates, move them through the funnel, just like a salesperson. But now I'm thinking about it, I'm guessing that a lot of those marketing skills and experience you had probably were very useful also in your role as HR. Was there any, apart from the IT specifics, was there anything from marketing that you felt you used in your HR space as well?
For sure, social media, because I used to just like run, you know, Facebook pages, Facebook, you know, like fun pages, 9 to 10 years ago. So that was a long time ago.
I remember, unfortunately, but yes.
Then I used to be a community manager. I would, you know, be responsible for different cooperations with partners. I mean, barter cooperations, organizing events. So all, you know, these skills are useful when building HR communication and, you know, preparing events to attract the candidates, preparing, you know, like all the, you know, content for the website, you know, or for the homepage. So basically, yeah, it was very useful.
Okay, I mean, that word attract is like so useful on both sides, right? That's what we do in so many elements of the business. But Natalia, so one of the questions I wanted to ask you to start, or to get started today, is one I've asked with the other guests I've had, which is, you know, one thing I found is that a lot of people have a misconception of what human resources and directors of human resources are and what they do. I mean, you know, from the outside, you just picture this person with lots of paperwork and contracts and, you know, insurances and so on. However, I think it's really different on the inside. Could you explain maybe a little bit, you know, about what was your kind of daily role and routine, especially maybe at Devante as being director of HR?
Of course, I think traditionally HR director is perceived as someone, you know, responsible for the payments, you know, remuneration, all those paperwork, as you said. In IT, I think lots of people would say HR directors is mainly focused on recruitment, because that's, you know, very important. But that's, of course, not everything. I think in general, this is thinking about HR strategy. I mean, where we are, where we want to be, and how are we going to do that. It's team building and managing the team, being a team leader, responsible not only for the organization, but growing the people in your team, thinking of how to expand the team in which directions, which fields. And it's a lot of when I said about the strategy, it's also about planning ahead, next year, next quarter, summing up. Also, in my case, it was a lot of agile elements, like weekly sprints or 2-week sprints, depending on the type of task that we put in the sprint, and then determining goals for each quarter according to objective key results methodology. That would be in align with the business goals of the company. So that's very important. And also, yes, there's still a lot of paperwork because, for example, I was also, of course, I was responsible for the budgeting, HR budget, planning the budget, and then executing and seeing, what the difference is, what we planned and what we spent, what was unexpected. And of course, remuneration, I mean, at least like the framework of remuneration for the company, being, able to benchmark not only this but also other trends, and basically being a trendsetter at the company. And ultimately, I think HR director is the face of the company, at least for the employees and for the candidates.
So it's simply, I would say, no, I mean that sounds great. And one thing I would love to ask you in a second is, like if a HR lead in a company is kind of watching this video, which hopefully if I do things right, they will, but it's just them right now and they know they're going to grow. I mean, when you were finishing your role at Devante, how big was the HR team?
9 people, including me. Yeah.
And how again, you talked about so much work that was on the director's shoulders. Could you maybe share a little bit about how the team was divided? Like, did you give some of the team recruitment responsibilities, some of the team something else? How did it look?
Yeah. 2 years ago, I recruited Przemek, who became recruitment lead, and that was my conscious decision to being able to scale the department and the responsibilities. I didn't want to be responsible any longer for recruitment priorities and execution in details. So that's one thing. And generally, the team is still divided into 2 sub teams. So there's recruitment. And also this is connected with onboarding and offboarding, because these are the 3 processes are connected. And then the other part of the team is employer branding, communication, culture, well-being, all those extra things, but they add up to the retention rate, which is super important. And the leader of this part is Ola. So I appointed leaders. It was a conscious decision to grow them, to be able to divide responsibility. And in general, it's a good habit to trust your people and let them experiment, and not to madly stick to all the duties that you used to have.
Sure.
You have to just let go at some point.
So I want, because again, I think we talked about this before. What I want to do is I always try to take this kind of great advice and make it into something that people can really understand. Was there something was there a moment in the growth of Devante or the work on your shoulders that made you realize now is the right time to expand the team? When is a really good sign that it's worth expanding? Is it about number of employees? Is it about number of hires? How did you do it, or what would you recommend?
It's a combination of both, number of employees and hires, but because this is not the only, hiring is not the only duty.
Absolutely,
others, but still, the more people you have on board, probably the more HR experts are necessary to take care of them. But it's not a simple math. I would say that when you have X number of people, X number of hires, you need this big an HR team. It all depends, I think, on the business goals. You have to always justify it, show the the business owners, the board, the return of investment, of hiring another team member, and how it will affect goals and ultimately company results in terms of employee satisfaction index or ENPS, employee net promoter score, or some other
Sure.
there are a bunch of things that you should measure, probably not just headcount, but retention, rotation index, etc. So you can show if anything changed, and you can show how you are going to divide the tasks within the team if you have a new person. In my case, I think, yeah, at the beginning it was mainly growing because of growing recruitment needs. We just couldn't, cover all the recruitment orders from the hiring managers with just, the 2 or 3 of us. So that was the first signal. But then, for example, we decided we need a person just for employer branding, not a recruiter. And it was a breakthrough to hire a first person who wouldn't be a recruiter, just employer branding, because we needed to focus on that. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so again, I think it's I guess with a lot of people in HR, especially who grow those teams, it's going to feel like a very natural step. Like you said, you get to some kind of limit in terms of time, in terms of attention, that it just makes logical sense. But I think we've got this question a little bit later on. I might bring it forward now, if that's okay, which is because it's really relevant, which is, you as a HR professional, you get to that limit and you go, okay, the company would really, really benefit from having another team member doing something. Then you have to go and ask for that person, right? You need budget, you need approval from the board or from the management. I know Devante is a very forward-thinking company. They have great branding. I mean, was it still a tough conversation for you, like going out there and saying, because again, I know that a lot of, let's say, less modern companies, they are not really valuing HR so much. When HR come and ask for money for people or for tools or or even like a budget for marketing, I feel like, they are not getting priority of this money. How was it for you? And, was there any way of explaining it to the board?
I think it's always tough, but it just has to be justified. What was helpful for me was this objective key results system that we were, working in. So planning ahead for the next year and then next quarter and quarter and quarter. So typically at the end of the year, I would be with my team, we would be planning based on the business expectations. We literally, we're asking, the other managers, directors, the board, we were, trying to understand the strategy of the company and asking them what will be necessary. And based on this, we will be planning our actions. Of course, it would then get modified every quarter. And then every 2 weeks, we had a sprint session in HR, because we started being agile, I think 2 or 3 years ago. To adjust, what's going on. So the number of new people for the HR was in the plan, because if we knew, for example, that the business expectation is to take care of leadership development plan, and we know that we don't have anyone who could do that because, skill gap or whatever, lack of time, different, priorities on other people, we know that we need to recruit this one person. Or if there's someone who will take care of it, then someone new has to substitute, because this and this. Also, what's helpful, we used to have weekly planning sessions as far as recruitment is concerned with other hiring managers. And Przemek was the one that started, matching recruiters, let's say, time to points, and then dividing it into recruitment processes according to priorities. So it was very, clear for the managers and the board to see, okay, we have this many recruitment processes, but we can only cover, this much with our current recruitment team. So we need more, or we have to cut down on our recruitment needs. So these are just
So really, I think that, for me, it sounds like, there's that transparency of data, of numbers, of showing, it sounds, obviously, I think, from tech companies, this will sound like something like, great, yeah, we can do that. I feel like, maybe some more older corporations will be like, oh my God, we can try. But the transparency seems to be the key, right? I mean, again, if you can share that, listen, each recruiter can handle maximum of 4 open positions at a time, or whatever the number may be. You've got a plan to increase the team by 20 people by the end of the year. We have a gap, right? It seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So it's really helpful, and generally, planning ahead but also not, not being waterfall, being agile. I mean, okay, we have a plan, but then we have to, have some catch ups and see whether we're going the right directions or maybe something changed. So that's.
Okay. And how was it, just before we quickly move on to the next one, how was it with the hiring managers? Did you ever find that, hiring managers expected things to happen quicker or expected
Of
more
course,
candidates?
all the time. They would be
Yeah.
expecting that. And I think the toughest managers are the, top managers, the boards, and
Okay.
the
Yeah.
team, because it's really, of course, hard to be, assertive and at the same time staying helpful. But this is, this sticking to this weekly system that, okay, we change priorities every Monday. We cannot change them in the middle of the week because we won't do anything. We won't get
Yeah. Yeah.
changing
Yeah.
every, 1 or 2 days. We just have to have at least a week that we know, okay, we're focusing on this and this and this. And then if there is a change, like you have to understand the hiring
Happen on
manager
Monday.
that this will
Yeah.
affect their priorities. Okay, if we have a new thing and none of the old things is, done, so which of the, things we're working on can be,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So really, I mean, again, I actually didn't obviously even consider that, using Agile in HR really helps you to obviously keep some kind of structure and focus, even if it is just short period of time.
It really helps. We had weekly sprints for recruitment, and as for other like quarterly goals, we would have 2-week sprints. So every
Yeah.
2 weeks we would have sprint review and planning based on first we use Trello, then we moved to Asana. So we would have just projects, tasks, assignees, and we could follow our progress. And for the company, the public view was a simplified, just like a simplified table of this. So yeah, so it helps. And also daily meetings. We used to have weekly, but when I had 3 people on board, including myself, in the team. But then as the team grew, we decided to have daily meetings, and it allowed the team to stay up to date with what the rest of the team is doing. And it helped us a lot during this COVID, remote work.
Sure.
It
Yeah.
wasn't like a change for us, it was just normal. Like every morning we have this daily, we just, allowed it to be longer to, just chat and relax,
Yeah.
instead of just like, in spite of having coffee at the office. So yeah, so it really helps all the agile elements.
Okay, I can imagine. I mean, that sounds really great. And just to kind of wrap that up, I think that just to take away a couple of tips from that, one is obviously that the transparency when working with management and CEOs and board members is really, it can, in your experience, it sounds like it really just made the situation easier and more obvious to grow, if that would be right. And
Part of the plan that you showed and the results, what you have achieved thanks to this and how the numbers change. Numbers meaning, headcount, employee satisfaction index, all the numbers.
yeah. And obviously that goes hand in hand with growing your team as well, right? Which is, when you're growing your team because you have a plan for the future, which I'm sure really a lot of people watching this video will have the same, but I'm sure that, I can imagine, I know my previous experience where there was a time when we didn't have such a plan. So I'm sure that there are people still out there that are kind of working week to week and not so much month to month or year to year. So it's a good idea just to stop, talk to your senior management, try to get a good idea of where the recruitment needs, the headcount needs will be, so it helps. So that's a really great advice. I think that would be even enough. But what I want to ask you next, Natalia, if I can, it is, you also talked about growing a team from 0 all the way through to having a 9-person department. Could you share a little bit about, your personal growth? Like, where would you go to gather knowledge, to gather experience? Was you learning from making mistakes? How did you go even as an individual professional? And where would you recommend other people learn?
So, I learned personally. I learned from my experience. I'm the type of person that really likes doing and just
Sure.
like experimenting and then seeing the results and optimizing like on the way. That's also, I think, the kind of I call it the MVP attitude. minimum viable product attitude that I've
Sure.
learned, and it's really helpful in organizations like Devante that tend to grow very fast. And for example, you have to introduce, you see that, your onboarding is kind of not really, working the way it should. So you cannot really plan this for weeks or months. You have to choose the crucial things that should work better, focus on them, start, from the next onboarding session, the change, and then on the way after, for example, a quarter or a couple of weeks, get, the team of people, involved, not only HR, but other people, discuss, what's better, what went wrong, what can we do else, and just optimize on the way. So that's very useful for me. And as far as getting knowledge, networking is really a great thing. Attending different, HR meetings, HR sessions. There are many. A couple of years ago, there weren't really many free HR meetings in Wrocław, but right now there are a couple. I don't know, now maybe in COVID, because of COVID, some of them are not really working, but then communities, especially Facebook, because LinkedIn, it doesn't really, I think, prioritize communities. So LinkedIn is rather for personal branding and just public discussions and maybe some private conversations. It's also good, but groups like I Love HR or in Polish HR of HR on Facebook. So if you cannot attend any meetings, even in the internet, you will find plenty of space to just share knowledge, and that's great. And for me also, this networking, for example, an interesting case how it worked for me. I used to attend this HR for breakfast meetings. It was paid, but not expensive, a couple of years ago. And then I met Monika Hutnik. She is leading at a global leadership agency in Wrocław. And she introduced me to Rita, who used to be HR manager at SoftServe, and told me about this, club of HR managers in IT companies in Wrocław, and that allowed me to enter the club and meet, 40 plus HR managers and directors from IT, companies, software houses in Wrocław. And it's been a great experience, really, to have a group of where trust between the members is, and lots of the members are older, more experienced than you. It was really great for me.
So even the smallest networking on the surface can lead you just very quickly into other groups and maximize the value, right?
Yeah, that's why I always say it's worth just getting to know each other and talk, and we'll see, maybe something interesting will happen. And it tends to happen from time to time.
Okay, I've got two questions left before we wrap up for today, and one of them is, I always think that, there is some great knowledge that you shared with us today, but I always think that, I've always taken value from tend to look at what other companies are doing and learn from them. I mean, I think that obviously anyone that goes and checks out, Devante's career page or Devante's employee branding, it's going to definitely come from your kind of influence there. Are there any other companies or any other individuals that you think are quite good at this, that are worth following tomorrow and keeping track of because of the knowledge that they share?
Yes, of course. I don't know about knowledge sharing, but for sure, impressive growth and examples of employer branding and, just practices. I think it won't be original to say that Guru has been one of the, fastest growing companies. Of course, a very good benchmark, I would say. I think their strength is having multiple offices in multiple, localizations.
Sure.
Plus openness to remote work long before it started to being trendy. Because, for example, we also at Devante, we always would have some part of remote employees, but it wasn't the substantial part. Whereas, as I understand, in NetGuru, this is something that was going on for a long time. Yeah. So for sure, NetGuru.
It's a good example. It's a really good one.
Yeah. And as far as professional, HR professionals are concerned, depending on, what you're looking for. But when it comes to sourcing and recruitment, for sure, Kasia Tang, whom I know you've interviewed as well.
Yeah, luckily, yes.
I think the whole B Talents team, Kasia Michalak, and the rest of the people there. And I think like our own or my own like teammate, team leader Przemek Wolski, he's been lecturing and cooperating, I know, with Kasia Tang, for example, as part of recruitment open community days.
Yes.
In different cities, and Przemek is really, forward thinking and very modern when it comes to sourcing techniques. He really revolutionized it. Of course, when you look, for example, say in employer branding or like modern things like, how you can use communities, for the benefit of the workplace. I would say Maja Gojtowska, Ula Zając-Paładyna, I would say Adrian Martinez. I think it's not original, like everyone who is into HR should know the names and follow the persons that I have just mentioned.
No, I think it's great. I mean, even though you may like, again, these people do a really good job of being visible, it doesn't always mean that people find them. Yeah. I mean, I remember I jumped into the HR space 3 months ago, and I was very lucky. Like you said, Adrian, Kasia, Maya, etc. They were there, which was great. But you still don't always know what to do first or who to listen to.
That's true. And I also want to say that these are people, most of them are like, public, that they are well known to the HR audience, but still like expanding your network to the actual, HR specialists, HR managers who may not necessarily be, in the public, because they just, have different things to do, because they have HR directors or, specialists occupied within the companies. They are also great source of knowledge, like really, because like reaching out and being, inspiration to one another, dealing with real, like everyday problems, because most of these experts are like external experts, so they have great, trendsetters, and they bring insight, etc. But still, like dealing with this, everyday business company.
I said this to Kasia Tang. I said, hey, listen, I think that when you come into a business or you've been brought in as a consultant, you probably don't have to fight for the attention of the managers or the board, because they've brought you in. It's already a good moment, where a HR manager or a HR specialist that's been hired as number one with a very tiny budget, they're not going to command the same kind of requirements. So it's very different between being a consultant expert and an internal manager.
And it's also true that external consultants are, and I think it's no wonder that they are viewed as, someone objective who comes from the outside and has, cold look at the situation and can say what's going on. I also had the pleasure to invite Kasia Tang for a review of our recruitment process.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, that was, I think, a year or a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. I don't know, but that was also very, very nice and useful for us.
Okay, perfect. So Natalia, I've got one last question. It's always sometimes the most challenging question, but it's always something I try to do. We talked about a lot of very cool things today, and I always ask each guest, if you could wrap up with kind of like 2 or 3 things that you think that, you would really recommend to any HR professional to start thinking about tomorrow, what would they be?
I would say first thing, ask your people about their opinion on the things that you're doing. Not only employee satisfaction surveys, which of course is very important, and it could be one huge a year as we did, plus like every quarter, like a small, checkpoints, just the employee net promoter score test, or like a daily, mood check or whatever. This is one thing, but also ask them before, for example, you launch an employer branding campaign, or before you make a huge change, like just, test it, ask about their opinion and see what is their reaction. I think you can learn a lot. and you can improve whatever you have. Is it a project or a tool or another change in the company before actually doing it? So this is, I think, the first thing. And it's not only with the benefit of making things you work on more appropriate and targeted, but also getting the people involved, engaged, making them feel, meaningful, making them feel that their voice is, heard. Then I would say another very important thing that is being it's like getting this the things that you do, try to measure it and show the value in numbers, show that that's what we've been already talking about. So use different indicators, headcount, rotation index, employee retention rate, employee satisfaction index, measure it like annually, quarterly. But not only this, you can measure, satisfaction of the candidates after the end of the process, after the end of the trial period. Also, when the offboarding happens, when someone leaves the company, really like ask, measure, analyze, and draw conclusions to, be better, but also to show the board and other, like managers of the company what's going on, to be able to translate what you're doing into like meaningful results, like ROI, right? Return of investment is very, very important.
Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't, even though it's a very human part of a business, the human resources part, it doesn't mean it can't be statistical, right, and analyzed.
Yeah, and last but not least, it's kind of similar to the first one, to asking people about their opinion, but like be open and like make a space for the people to ask you questions, to vote their opinions, ideas. It could be, I don't know, a Slack channel, a regular forum meeting, some other forms of meeting, because one thing is to ask about their opinion on your actions or plans or processes. Another thing is like making space for their interaction and bringing in their, values, their doubts, their ideas on a daily basis. So there has to be a channel for that.
Sure. Yeah. Makes sense. And I mean, again, I know that I say it makes sense. However, I also know how easy it is not to have those things. So, we don't even remember them until that case. So Natalia, that was amazing. Thank you so much for your insights today. My last question would be, how can people get in touch with you? I think that, I think some people would love to ask you some questions, or maybe even ask you about, your free time or your services available. What's the best way to contact you?
I think LinkedIn, plus I can leave my, email.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if I should say it or like...
Well, you can definitely share it, and I'll put it in the comments as well. So what's the email address to catch you on?
It's nat.urbanska, so nat.urbanska@gmail.com.
Perfect. I will make sure that we write that out somewhere as well, just in case, but I think that's great. But
yeah, and I'll be happy to talk to, any of you have, questions, experiences to share, or maybe looking for some kind of support or, cooperation, because as I have said, I'm on the verge of changes. So I am all open to, getting inspired and to talking and cooperating.
Perfect. No, Natalia, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. I think that I have no doubt that there were some really super valuable tips in there as well.
Really, I hope.
And thanks so much for making the time. And I'm sure that you're going to hear from some of the viewers as well that have some questions. So thank you so much. Thank you. And best of luck with your challenges in the future. I'm sure you're going to find something great. And yeah, thanks again, and look forward to being in touch.
Thanks.